To be a Christian was to know as many Bible verses as you can. That's what I focused on. I knew, your John 3:16. I knew John 1:1. I knew a lot of different verses, and people thought I was really smart, but I just knew the verses, and that was a bit of my childhood. At the same time, I was having a lot of troubles in school. I was failing, and my mom would always be happy if I got C's and D's, and it was, and it wasn't because I was struggling, it was because I wasn't trying. And I was with these friends who, didn't really care much about school, but, they didn't get into a lot of trouble, so they were guys who would be willing to hang out with me. I just hid all of that from, my leaders, my cousins, anyone who cared for me. It was like a two life for me, I was like a two-face. At church, I'd be this good kid who knew his scripture or knew word for word, and then I'd go to school and be with these guys who, are failing classes, would swear every other sentences, be in this relationship that, what didn't even help me at all. I just remember that day, I was in my basement and, I was just on the computer and just had this thought come to me. I reflected about all my friends, reflected about this relationship, reflected about going to church, and I said to myself, if this is really it, then this is a waste of time. Why am I going to grow up just to make friends, or why am I going to grow up just to work? What's the point? And I think that was the first time I really felt a conviction, and so I just had this yearning to be inspired. I was a big believer that, although that God can intervene and make changes, I knew that I had to take my own actions and remember that, whatever actions I take, that God will walk alongside me. And so I made a huge turnover for my grades. I did way better in school, took it more seriously, did all my work. And I think the biggest changes in my life were my mentors. The only way I could describe my mentors is I use Naruto. And these mentors, I think of four automatically who were different senseis. And my first one, his name is Cha Mo, and he was my Iruka sensei. And the reason why I felt like he was is because I think he was the first person to acknowledge me and to bring me out of my shell. I never opened up to anyone. He was the first one to get to me. The next guy, his name was Ku Bang. We call him Big Ku, and I consider him the Hokage. And the reason why, I just look at him and I just feel like, I admired this guy. He is the strongest guy that I know. The next mentor his name is Jason Yang, and he is the Kakashi Sensei, where he did a lot of teaching, he did a lot of training. He taught me everything I knew about basketball. He was the first person who asked me about a relationship with Christ. Because when I was younger, to me, being a Christian was just memorizing your scriptures. But he was the first one to actually ask about my personal relationship with Christ, and I never understood what that meant, and he helped me go through that. The last guy, his name is Jerry Yang, and I would say he's my Jiraiya sensei, and I think he's played a huge role in my life, just walking with me throughout, when I started high school to even now. He's still my Jiraiya sensei, and he just really helped me sharpen all the tools, all my knowledge, with life, with relationships, with the Bible. The first time I met him, he gave me this book, and it was called Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. I think on chapter 23, and I was starting to slack off, was falling asleep reading, wasn't getting much out of it, and I almost, I was basically going to fall asleep, and then I hear this voice in my head, and I hear, just something saying, Nusho, you got to wake up, you got to read this, you got to do this, it's going to change your life. And I just woke up and I was like, whoa, what happened, And so I got up and I really took that to heart, and I read it, I finished it, and that's where I really gave my life, dedicated my life to God. I think the one passion, and I keep bringing it back, is basketball. I think I've used it in many ways, but growing up with it, I think that's how all my mentors were able to use it to shape me, to mold me. And anything that was related to basketball, they would always bring it back to, like how do we become um, men who were believers of Jesus Christ when we played this game. And that was the focus of me growing up, because um, basketball was a huge deal. So if it became a huge part of my life, then how do I dedicate that to God? In my alone time, I use a lot of basketball to just connect with God. Sometimes I would have conversations with God when I'm playing, when I'm shooting, when I'm dribbling. Sometimes I wondered, I asked God, what happened, God, if I kept playing, and how would you use me today? And so that's all I knew growing up, basketball and mentors. And that's when I realized that, these young guys that I grew up with were the source of what I wanted to do. How could I have, if I were, a mentor to them, how could I have helped them turn their lives around or transform their lives, or how could God use me to do anything in their lives? And so that's what I set forth my life, when I entered college, when I'm out of college, just to see, how God can use me to support youth in what they do wherever they're at. I realized that, when you hit this point where this is it, if this is it, then this is a waste of time, then your motivation, your hope, your contentment, everything it means nothing. I believe that I have this supernatural hope that, whatever comes my way, whether if it's, a stumbling block or anything, I never ask God why. I always ask God, what's next? What do you have next? And if I didn't have God, then I wouldn't be able to ask what's next. What do you have in plan for me? And I think that's why God's so significant in my life.